Okay, I have a confession to make.
Oh,
I was walking downtown the other day trying to get to a meeting. I was late, sweating a little bit, and I had to duck under this low-hanging branch of a massive oak tree.
I think I know where this is going.
And then I get to my car later, and it is covered, just coated in that sticky, impossible-to-remove sap. And my first thought was, honestly, why is this thing even here?
That is the classic urban grievance, isn't it? The tree as an obstacle.
It really is. I feel like for most of us, city trees are kind of like eccentric roommates.
Yeah.
They're nice to look at sometimes, but they're messy, they buckle the sidewalk.
And if you own a business, they're probably blocking that expensive sign you just paid for.
Exactly. We tend to file them under decoration. They're an amenity, a nice to have, but, fundamentally a luxury item with a very real maintenance bill.
And if the city budget gets tight, the landscaping is always the first thing to go.
Always. But you sent me this whole stack of papers this morning, research from the University of Washington, University of Illinois, reports from the UK Council. And now I'm feeling a little guilty about my sap rage.
Well, the goal today isn't to make you feel guilty. It's to change the filing system. The data suggests we shouldn't be looking at trees as landscaping. We should be looking at them as infrastructure.
Infrastructure.
Right.
Like a road or a sewer line.
And not just any infrastructure. We're talking high-yield, heavy-lifting infrastructure.
So that's the pivot for this deep dive. We are going to unpack the hidden balance sheet of the urban forest. And I was surprised by how hard the numbers are. This isn't about vibes or feeling one with nature.
No, this is accounting. We're talking about retail pricing, crime rates, even hospital recovery times.
And the sources are pretty solid. You mentioned Dr. Kathleen Wolfe at the University of Washington, Dr. Francis Kuo at Illinois.
Yes, and extensive data from councils in the UK and work out of Georgia. This isn't poetry, it's economics.
Okay, so let's start where it matters most to the skeptics. The money. If I'm a city planner or a business owner, why should I care about a tree other than the cost to, prune it?
You should care because of something the research calls the amenity margin. Dr. Kathleen Wolfe did these really clever consumer behavior studies, looking specifically at trees in business districts.
And she was trying to answer a simple question, right? Does a tree canopy actually change how you spend your money?
Exactly. How do you even test that? Well, they used image-based surveys.
Okay, so paint the picture for me.
They showed participants various potential shopping districts. Some were what they called Category A, just hardscapes, concrete, visible buildings, maybe a few bollards, but basically barren.
Right.
And others were Category B, interspersed with mature trees, planters, a green canopy. Then they asked, how much would you pay for this set of goods in this location?
And I'm guessing people didn't say, I'll pay less because there are leaves on the ground.
Quite the opposite. Consumers reported a willingness to pay, on average, about 12% more for goods in the landscape district.
12%. That is a significant markup just for the scenery.
It is. But here's where it gets really granular. That 12% is just the average.
Okay.
When you look at convenience goods, impulse buys like a sandwich for lunch or a bouquet of flowers, that willingness to pay jumps up to 50%.
Wait, 50? 50.
50%, yes.
Half, again, as much. So let's role play this. I'm walking down a leafy, shaded street. I see a deli. Why is my brain telling me that a ham and cheese sandwich is worth $15 instead of $10?
It's a mix of perceived quality and, well, comfort. The greenery signals care. Subconsciously, your brain assumes that a business in a well-maintained green environment probably offers higher quality products and better service.
It just feels more upscale.
It feels more upscale, so the tree itself acts as a kind of proxy for the quality of the ham.
That's wild. And it wasn't just sandwiches, right? It applied to bigger purchases, too.
Yes, big ticket comparison items as well. Things like sports shoes or prescription glasses. You aren't just buying the object, you're buying the experience of being in that location.
There was also a really funny point in the study about parking. Because, people will drive in circles for 20 minutes to save $2 on parking.
It's a universal constant, and yet the study found shoppers were willing to pay more for parking if the lot was landscaped with trees.
Which is so counterintuitive. Usually we strip out trees to squeeze in one more parking spot and maximize revenue.
Exactly. But the math suggests that the revenue you lose by taking out one spot to plant a tree could actually be offset or even exceeded by the higher fees people are willing to pay for the remaining shaded spots.
A hot car is a misery. A shaded car is a premium service.
That's it.
So if the shoppers love it, And they're basically begging to throw money at these businesses. The merchants must be thrilled, right? They must be
Yeah.
out there with shovels every weekend.
You would think so. But this is where we hit a massive disconnect. Wolf's research uncovered this huge gap in perception between the business owners and the customers.
Don't tell me they preferred the concrete jungle.
They did. The merchants consistently rated the Category A settings, the grim, hard-featured streets, higher than the green ones.
Why? I don't get it. Are they just allergic to joy?
They're terrified of visibility issues. They look at a tree and they think, that branch is going to block my awning.
Ah, people won't see my logo from the car.
Exactly. They prioritize that visual clarity above everything else. And I get it, if you pay for a sign, you want people to see it.
Sure.
But they are completely misreading the customer. The merchants rated the green settings lower than the potential shoppers did. They don't realize the tree creates a welcoming signal.
A welcoming signal.
In the tree districts, the ratings for merchant interactions, so how helpful and friendly you expect the staff to be, were about 15% higher.
So the merchant is thinking, they need to see my sign, but the customer is thinking, if there are trees here, the shop owner is probably a nice person.
It creates a halo effect around the entire business. And by cutting the trees down to make the sign more visible, the merchant is actually stripping away that premium perception.
So that's retail. Let's scale this up. If I'm willing to pay 50% more for a sandwich, what happens when I'm buying a house?
The green premium absolutely translates to real estate. Now, obviously, housing markets are complicated.
Of course.
But looking at U.S. data from the 90s, properties in tree-lined areas were valued up to 6% higher than comparable houses in treeless areas.
Which, in actual dollars, is not pocket change.
No. Depending on the home's value, that was a bump of anywhere from, $2,600 to $9,500 just for the trees.
Wow.
And there was one study I found fascinating because of how precise it was. It noted a $4.20 decrease in sales price for every foot a home was located away from a green space.
Talk about monetizing the view. Every step you take away from the park costs you $4.
Literally. And this isn't just a U.S. thing. That Warwick District Council report from the U.K., it had local estate agents confirming this. They said even if the price ceiling wasn't always higher, the velocity was.
Meaning they sell faster.
Much faster. Demand is just higher.
But this brings up what I call the developer's dilemma. I see this constantly in my neighborhood. A developer buys a lot with these beautiful old trees on it.
And the first thing they do is bring in the bulldozer.
Yes. They flatten the whole thing. Why? If the trees add value, aren't they just burning money?
From their perspective, it's about efficiency. It is so much cheaper and faster to maneuver cranes and cement trucks on a flat, clear dirt lot. Working around a root system is a headache.
It slows down the build.
Right, so they save money on the construction process. Short term, yes. But the data suggests it's economically short-sighted. Clearing an unimproved lot is costly in its own way, but preserving the existing trees can increase the final development land value by up to 27%.
So they're saving pennies on the bulldozer to lose dollars on the sale price.
Precisely. They're prioritizing the ease of the process over the value of the final product.
Okay, I want to challenge you on this next part.
Yeah.
Because we're moving into social issues, specifically crime. And frankly, this is where the trees are good argument usually loses me.
Go on.
Well, the conventional wisdom, and I've heard this from police officers, is that you clear vegetation to improve safety. If you have thick bushes and trees, you're giving muggers a place to hide. You're blocking sightlines. So how can you claim adding trees reduces crime?
You're right. That is the conventional wisdom. And if you are talking about, dense, unmanaged shrubbery right next to a walkway, the kind you can crouch behind, there is some truth to that.
Okay.
But we're talking about the urban forest. High canopy trees.
So tree trunks, not bushes.
Right. And the study that really flipped the script on this was by Kuo and Sullivan in 2001. They looked at inner city public housing in
So
Chicago.
it was the identical building study, right?
Yes. This is what makes it such good science. They compared buildings that were architecturally identical, same demographics, same neighborhood. The only real variable was that some buildings were surrounded by concrete and asphalt.
And others had trees and grass.
Exactly. And the results weren't subtle. The buildings with higher vegetation cover had significantly lower crime rates.
Including violent crimes.
Including violent crime.
Okay, but why? I still struggle with the mechanism there. Is it just that the trees look nice so people behave better?
There are two main mechanisms at play. The first is what the urbanist Jane Jacobs called eyes on the street. Green spaces they attract people. If you have a barren concrete slab, nobody hangs out there.
But if you have shade and grass...
People congregate. The grandmother sitting on the bench becomes the security guard. The more legitimate usage a space has, the less opportunity there is for illicit usage.
Makes sense.
But the second mechanism is the one I find most compelling. It's biological. It's about something called mental fatigue.
Unpack that for me. When I think of fatigue, I think of meeting an app, not robbing someone.
Think about the feeling you have at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday. You've been staring at a screen, dealing with traffic, noise, demands. Your brain is just tired. When we're mentally fatigued, we lose what's called inhibitory control.
We get snappy.
We get irritable, we make impulsive decisions, we're more likely to lash out. And that state is a known precursor to aggression and violence. The research shows that exposure to vegetation, even just looking at trees, mitigates this fatigue.
It recharges your brain.
It restores its ability to focus and remain calm. So in a high-stress environment like inner-city public housing, the tree is basically acting like a pressure release valve.
It's a passive social worker.
That's a great way to put it. It lowers the aggregate aggression level of the entire neighborhood.
That is heavy. And I guess that connects to the road safety data, too, because you mentioned road rage in the notes.
It does. It's the same psychological mechanism. Less stress equals less aggressive driving. But there's also a cool physical engineering trick here called visual friction.
I love that term, visual friction.
It's great, right? Imagine a wide open concrete road. No trees, big shoulders. What does that feel like to you?
It feels like a runway. It makes me want to go fast.
Exactly. It signals safety at speed. But if you line that same street with trees, it creates an optical narrowing effect. The peripheral vision gets filled, it just feels tighter.
So I instinctively slow down because my brain thinks I'm going faster than I actually am?
Correct. It's a traffic calming device that doesn't require a speed bump or a camera. And of course, it provides a physical buffer. If a car does jump the curb, there is a literal trunk between the moving metal and the pedestrian.
A shield that also tricks you into driving safer.
And lowers your blood pressure while you do it.
Which is a perfect segue into public health. Because we're not just talking about feeling chill. We're talking about actual medical recovery. The hospital study, this is the famous one, isn't it?
It's the gold standard in environmental psychology. Roger Ulrich's study. He looked at patients recovering from gallbladder surgery, and he assigned them to rooms. Half looked out at a brick wall.
And the other half looked out at a stand of trees. And just to be clear, they weren't like going for walks in a garden. They were stuck in bed.
Stuck in bed, just looking through the glass. And the results were staggering. The patients with the tree view recovered significantly faster. They were discharged sooner.
That's money saved right there for the hospital.
Huge money. But here's the kicker. They required less high-potency pain medication, and they had fewer negative notes from nurses about their attitude.
So the view of nature actually acted as an analgesic, a painkiller.
Yeah.
That is mind-blowing. It really makes you wonder why we build hospitals that look like factories.
And offices that look like prisons. Dr. Rachel Kaplan did similar work with desk workers. She found that employees who could see nature from their desk experienced 23% less time off sick.
23%. If I'm a CEO, that's a massive productivity number.
It is. And they also reported greater job satisfaction. It's such a simple intervention. Just give people a window. But we're so obsessed with maximizing floor space that we create these windowless cubicle farms.
We're designing for density, not for the human animal.
Exactly. And speaking of which, there was that specific note about children with ADD and ADHD.
Yes, the Taylor, Kuok, and Sullivan study.
They found that contact with nature, so green play settings, had a measurable positive effect on their symptoms. It effectively recharges their voluntary attention mechanism.
So they could focus better afterwards.
Better than if they'd been playing indoors or just on concrete. So recess isn't just a break. It can actually be a treatment.
If the playground has trees, yes. Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty, the engineering side of things. Because I feel like whenever people talk about trees, there's a bit of greenwashing. You know, trees save the planet. Plant a billion trees and climate change is over. But the sources you pulled were actually pretty nuanced on this.
No, and I think that honesty is critical if we want engineers to take this stuff seriously. We have to acknowledge the complexity.
So let's start with the pollution thing. I always just thought trees were pure air filters.
And there are filters. They catch particulates. They absorb nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide. That study in the West Midlands estimated that doubling their tree numbers could reduce excess deaths from particulate pollution by 140 people a year.
140 funerals canceled. That's huge.
It is. But you flagged some bad news about something called VOCs.
Right. This is the caveat. Trees are living organisms. They breathe. and they emit chemicals called volatile organic compounds.
That sounds toxic. Well, not usually. It's what gives them their scent. But in hot weather, certain species like willows, poplars, oaks, they emit high levels of these VOCs. When you mix those natural chemicals with man-made car exhausts and then bake it all in the sun,
You get a problem.
you get ground-level ozone, smog. It burns your lungs. So planting the wrong kind of tree in the middle of a traffic jam on a hot day can actually make air quality worse.
So the takeaway isn't don't plant trees, it's plant the right trees.
Exactly. The report suggests species like ash, alder, and birch because they're low emitters. It's about being a botanical engineer, not just a gardener.
Okay, then there's the carbon argument. Every corporate press release talks about carbon sequestration. But the West Midlands study was a bit of a reality check on that, wasn't it?
It was a cold splash of water, yeah. They calculated the total carbon stored in all the trees in that entire city area, and it only equaled about 3 weeks of the city's annual CO2 emissions.
3 weeks, so it helps. But we are not going to tree plant our way out of the emissions problem.
And the scale just isn't there. But, and this is a huge but, the secondary carbon impact is massive.
This is the energy conservation piece.
Yes. Don't think of the tree as a vacuum cleaner for carbon. Think of it as a shield. If you plant trees as windbreaks, you reduce heating costs in the winter. More importantly, if you shade the west wall of a building.
You slash the need for air conditioning in the summer?
Drastically. So the tree keeps the building cool, which means the power plant doesn't have to burn as much coal to run the AC. That's where the real carbon savings are.
It's an efficiency play. Let's touch on water before we wrap up, because every time it rains hard now, it feels like the streets flood.
That's the impervious surface problem. Concrete acts like a slide, water hits it, gains speed, and just slams into the storm drains, overwhelming them.
And a tree acts like a sponge.
Basically, the canopy intercepts the rain before it even hits the ground. It evaporates. The roots break up the soil so water can soak in. The data shows that for every 5% increase in tree cover, storm water runoff is reduced by 2%.
That sounds small.
It sounds small until you look at the aggregate. One scenario estimated that trees could save a medium-sized city $226,000 in stormwater control costs for a single storm.
$250,000.
Just by not having to treat that water.
And finally, noise. I live near a highway, so this one is personal for me.
Trees are excellent sound barriers, but they have to be dense. They don't just block sound, they absorb and scatter it. A wide belt of trees can reduce the apparent loudness by 50%.
Half the noise. That's the difference between a roar and a hum.
Exactly. It's about a 7 decibel reduction for every 33 meters of forest. It's better than a concrete wall because it doesn't just bounce the sound back, it eats it.
So when we stack all this up, retail sales up, property values up, crime down, faster hospital recovery, energy savings, flood control.
It's a pretty compelling resume for a piece of decoration.
It really is. It brings me back to that hidden balance sheet idea. It seems like the trees are working harder than some of the city employees.
And they're the only infrastructure that actually appreciates in value over time. A road starts falling apart the day you pave it. A tree just gets more valuable every year.
So the question I'm left with, and I want to leave the listener with, is why? Why do business owners and city planners still fight this? Why do we still see so much of that Category A barren concrete?
I think it's inertia. And it's a flaw in how we calculate cost. We see the bill for pruning the branches. We see the bill for raking the leaves. Those are real line items on a spreadsheet.
But we don't see the other bill.
We don't see the bill for the police overtime handling disputes caused by mental fatigue. We don't see the bill for lost retail sales or for the flooded basements. Those costs are invisible to the budget office, but they are very, very real to the community.
We are stepping over dollars to pick up pennies.
That's the perfect way to describe it.
It really makes you think about how we design our lives. We build these efficient concrete boxes to live and work in, thinking we're being smart, but we're actually designing against our own biology.
And if this data shows us anything, it's that when you fight your own biology, it costs you. Physically, mentally, and economically.
So the next time you're walking downtown, you get annoyed by a root on the sidewalk or, some sap on your windshield. Maybe take a beat. Maybe that tree just saved you a few dollars on your AC bill.
Or kept you calm enough not to yell at the driver who just cut you off.
Yeah. Exactly. I think I'll keep the trees. Thanks for diving deep with us.
Anytime. See you next time.